to why he's having these issues addressed. They're uncomfortable, and that's why they draw our attention. But then we interact with the other side. For example, the crystal bed. And healing, like my father has mentioned, goes so much beyond addressing these issues. Right? It's not just about making the shoulder feel better. That's a very valid aspect of it. But we start to see through this work that we're interconnected, right? Both interpersonally, but within ourselves. The psychological affects the physical. The physical affects the emotional. And so if we start to attach or address a particular issue, it's going to affect our whole self. And that's the true power, I think, of the crystal bed in this work, is that we come for a particular issue often, or just curiosity, but oftentimes with an issue, and it becomes so much more than that. It becomes a revolution of who we are, how we express ourselves, and connecting with our ideal self. And I'd be happy to talk about the mechanisms of the bed in more detail. I see we're running a little bit short on time, so I'll open it up to a few questions.
We also have been exposed to crystal bowls and the sound vibrations in the healing pattern. Is there any relationship between the crystal bed and the crystal of the bowls? Or are you familiar with them?
I'm familiar in a very cursory sense with sound healing and crystal bowls. I think they're a very wonderful healing modality. To my mind, we could look at the crystals of the bowl and the bed as being mechanisms for healing. I would not put them in the same category because the crystals are acting as a mechanism for these very evolved spirits to interact with us. There's the more, I guess you could say, tangible level of these 7 crystals, as we've mentioned, suspended over our different energy centers, these different aspects of who we are. And that helps release certain blockages, perhaps related to a particular issue. And it helps revitalize our energy system. But on the spiritual aspect, we do have this interaction going on. So there is the mechanism. The crystals are acting as mechanisms in both cases, but there's a little bit more going on with the crystal bed, if you ask me.
What does a crystal bed look like?
You ought to talk about that.
I am
bed
so glad you asked. Thank you. Crystal bed is such a misnomer.
The fundamentals a bit.
Exactly. I'll go ahead and get back to the fundamentals and describe the bed because it's probably not the best translation. They might have a better word for it in Portuguese. I don't know.
Do you want to bring it up online?
I think I'll be able to describe it. And we also have our website, which you can all check out. We have lots of pictures. The crystal bed is also known as a crystal bath, and it's a series of 7 crystals suspended over our body, and they each flash a particular light for each of what we call chakras. My dad did a beautiful meditation going down each of the chakras and their symbology of how they manifest in the world. These lights flash above the person, and that in of itself is very healing. These crystals are very high frequency. They're mined from one large chunk of quartz crystal found in Brazil. They're mined to a very pristine level, and they are blessed by the entity, John of God and entity. So the entity of that day blesses the crystal for the work. So it has a very unique and high frequency in and of itself.
What are the people doing? What am I doing? Laying on a bed, sitting in a chair, sitting in a bathtub?
Exactly.
You're lying on a bed, and really, you're not doing a whole lot. The work comes afterwards. Sometimes people get homework, if you want to call it that, different, more concrete courses of action that they can take. But while you're on the bed, your main job, I say, is to be receptive. Okay? Being receptive to the work is like the number one. And then gratitude. But you don't have to worry about meditating or doing particular anything, really. You're just lying on the bed. We have some headphones for some nice music to help you relax, if you like that. But really, and within the experience, there's such a wide range of what is possible. There's no normal here. There's no normal for what it feels like. There's some common things. Some people feel heat or tingling in their hands, or places of injury might get a little bit achy as energy moves through that part of the body. Sometimes people's mind actually gets a little more scattered. It's not just puppy dogs and rainbows total blissed out all the time. We're helping to address patterns of behavior, of thinking, of feeling. And as these work out of our system, we sometimes have to address some long-standing emotional problems, or not problems, patterns, we'll call them patterns, that are not helping us be our ideal person in the world. Okay? The work is helping us become our ideal person, so we can do good in the world. That's the name of the game. And while that happens, people might feel a little bit antsy, lots of energy is going through, there's some emotional clearing. That's not uncommon. And then sometimes there are more visionary experiences.
Well, thank you.
How are these crystals above us if you're laying down?
Mm-hmm.
Are they in a netting, or what is that, electrically done, or what?
Yeah, there's a couple different models out, but basically it's a mechanism, a boom, I guess. It's just aluminum frame that houses the electronics. The crystals flash in a particular pattern to help get the energy flowing. And it's just a housing, an aluminum housing, and the crystals themselves are attached to lights. They're LED lights, and they're suspended that way. So it's basically you can visualize a bar of metal. I apologize, there's no pictures. But
Do any therapy or anything with that, or what? Anything physical?
I don't mix anything with the crystal bed because I'd like to clarify. Thank you. I'm really glad you asked that question. I do so little with the bed. I call myself a facilitator. I facilitate your physical experience with the bed. I happen to have one of these bodies, and I can use it to put you on the bed. Okay, that's part of my job. It's a very small job. And then I go to a different room and I meditate. And that contributes physical energy to the work. We're talking about very high frequency spirits, and they have transcended the physical plane. So I give a little bit of a boost. I do receive impressions about the nature of the work, and I can share that, but it's completely optional. The primary thing is your relationship to the work and to the guides and to the healing. I'm here to answer questions and add context to your experience.
Yeah, I just got one question. I've worked with crystal radios for a long time, bend them or something like that. They give you certain frequencies, also give you certain wavelengths. So I'm wondering, what are the wavelengths of the frequencies of the crystals that you're working with? Are they actually moving, to create these frequencies? What would be the frequency, the wavelength these things?
I'm going to have to confess that I don't have the exact numbers. But I think the way that we can conceptualize the frequencies is through the chakra system. The chakra system, as we discussed in the beginning of meditation, has different light or colors associated with each of them. For example, the first is red, the slowest wavelength. And we move up all the way to violet, the fastest wavelength. And the crystals are flashing light. And light has a wavelength and a frequency. And that's the mechanism. The crystals have some unique properties, being very pristine quartz to help transmit that frequency. But it is light and energy corresponding to the chakra system.
I think you explained what the frequencies are for the crystals, which is the frequency of the light. But you talk about high frequency beings, advanced beings. What frequency of what? What do you mean by frequency?
Thanks for asking. That's a little bit of a curveball, but no, in all seriousness, you can think of, for example, the difference between the physical plane and light. Okay, all matter is vibrating, albeit at a very slow rate. We can't see it, but we do know from science that the Earth itself has a frequency. Our bodies have frequency, and then moving on, for example, light has frequency, a radio wave can have a frequency. So when we talk about high frequency beings, and this does get into some esoteric, philosophical things, but that's why we're here, we've come to this earth to learn lessons, if you ask me. We learn our lessons. Our core nature is spirit. This is a temporary state that we've incorporated into for very specific reasons. We're starting to get into spiritism, and that's a whole talk in and of itself. But I'm saying that these beings have learned their lessons on the physical plane. It is no longer serving their lessons to incorporate physically. Occasionally we have standouts, Buddha, okay, Krishna, Jesus. They have standouts and they've come for a very specific reason. But normally, these frequencies, these spirits, these entities, no longer need to be in the physical. They have transcended the physical frequency, their higher frequency, light frequency, for example. And that's where it becomes so important to have this mechanism for them to deal with the physical. They mentioned that John of God is a very unique man. He can handle these frequencies. But occasionally the entity becomes so high frequency that no human being could hold that frequency and live. It's just beyond our physical capability.
So, according to what your father said previously, we could probably do this ourselves without the crystal bed. The crystal bed just makes it go faster?
I think that'd be a very appropriate way of saying it. I would say that the crystal bed's a turbo boost, right? We could all go and become very spiritual people, meditate several hours a day. And yeah, we don't need necessarily these tools. They're tools.